I've always been a fan of more cozy games. I love spending time farming or even doing a bit of light, easy dungeon exploration with something like Rune Factory. Games like these never fail at both calming my nerves and, for pretty varying reasons, being incredibly satisfying to play. So from the screenshots and premise alone, I knew Studio Supersoft's Moonstone Island would be right up my alley. Much to my surprise though, I underestimated just how much I'd enjoy the game, because this isn't just a farm sim. Moonstone Island is also a creature collector, a deck builder, it somehow manages to squeeze in a bit of Zelda, and each of these aspects of the game are things I already love or really enjoy separately. I never would have expected to see all of this combined in one game before. And while there are some rough spots here and there, it makes for one of the most unique and enjoyable cozy games I've ever played. Heck, I'd go as far as to say even people who don't normally enjoy things like Stardew Valley might like this. So I'd suggest sticking around if I've caught your interest. Moonstone Island is a pretty unique and great game that deserves more spotlight, and frankly, I'm pretty confident I can sell some of you on it if you haven't already played it for yourself. The story of Moonstone Island is incredibly simple. You, the player, are an alchemist in training, a person who works with nature to help people keep balance and take care of or deal with powerful spirits across the world's many floating islands. In order to complete your training, though, you have to take on your village's tradition of leaving home and living on your own for a single year, armed with only the basic necessities and one of your mom's 3 spirits to protect you. However, you were unfortunately never taught how to properly land your trusty flying broom, so you end up crash landing on Moonstone Island, your new home for the next year. As a whole, while there are little bits of world building as well as plot here and there, the game's pretty light on story, since Moonstone Island's primary focus is on the gameplay and how you spend your time. The world of Moonstone Island isn't exactly light on charm, though. The residents are all plenty likable, and they help to give the island a very homey and welcoming feel. Really, the only shame is that I wish there were a few more of them. The game's also very nice to look at. All of the islands and character portraits look great, and I personally really liked all of the designs for the spirits, with the psychic spirit Taro being my favorite for how absolutely adorable it is. The only real criticism I have with it, though, is the music. Now, don't get me wrong here, I do think it sounds really nice. That isn't the issue. The issue is the long, awkward pauses. After a song finishes, the music will stop playing altogether for a little while, and you just have some very light ambience. While I'm perfectly fine with it in games like Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, here it feels like there's supposed to be music playing and it just isn't. With what I've mentioned before, though, I'm sure all of you are far more interested in how Moonstone Island actually plays. And with how many different elements this game blends together, we have a lot to talk about. During your stay on Moonstone Island, there won't be any shortage of things to do, but you will have a shortage of time. The most important thing to establish first is that, like most similar games, you have a set amount of time to do things on any given day. And on a related note, I'd suggest heading into the settings and changing the day length. The default time is very short, and while it does pause in menus and during combat, you'll only have like 17 or 18 minutes for a day. And with all the farming, gathering, and exploring you'll be doing, you're gonna need the extra couple of minutes. Out of everything in Moonstone Island, the thing you'll be spending the most time with will more than likely be exploring and doing dungeons. At the start, you can only get to other islands by either riding a balloon, your broom once you've made a new one, or alternatively by making a bunch of long, gravity-defying bridges like I did. Once you finally make the glider, though, you'll have complete freedom to go everywhere. And let me tell ya, with how much there is to find and how big the world is, that freedom is a pretty great feeling. Outside of Moonstone Island, you have 6 different elementally aligned islands you can find, with each having plenty of resources and their own corresponding spirits. A lot of islands do also have special hazards that drain your stamina. You could make special charms to protect against them, but honestly, you can very easily power through it by just downing stamina restoring items. Like, I'm actually on fire right now, but I can assure you, it's nothing to be concerned over. You can, of course, also tame new spirits while you're exploring. By feeding wild spirits items with tame attributes, you can fill up their heart gauge, and once full, you'll have a random chance of recruiting them. 2 important things to note, though. First off, you can only have 3 spirits on you at a time, and until you make a spirit barn, you won't be able to keep more than 3. And secondly, you're also limited in what spirits you can get at the start. See, Moonstone Island has a skill tree with 6 different branches that you can earn points in by doing enough of a certain thing. At the start, until you upgrade the spirit tree more, you can only tame spirits up to level 5 or so. If I'm being honest here, I really wish the beginning limit was 10. Being limited to taming only level 5 spirits at the start feels too restricting, and it makes the already kind of slow first few hours feel even slower. With that being said though, the biggest thing you'll want to keep an eye out for is the 30 dungeons as well as 4 seasonal temples on the other islands, both of which tie into a game-long set of objectives. See, early on you'll meet someone called the Magic Man, who for currently unknown reasons hid their memories in 15 mirror shards that you'll find by doing half of the 30 dungeons. They, like the islands themselves, are all procedurally generated, with the amount of chests inside differing based on the dungeon's size. They'll always share the same aesthetic and boss though, with the latter having a different element and level determined by the island you found the dungeon on. The seasonal temples are important for more spoilery reasons, but your main objective is simple. You'll need to retrieve a special seal at the top of each temple by offering up seasonal crops and items to 3 altars, and finding a spirit on each floor, with the final one having an untamable boss spirit. Interestingly enough though, each temple will also give you a special alchemist tool you can use for its associated temple and outside of it. While this is definitely a cool idea, each tool has varying degrees of usefulness. I used the alchemist's rod a few times since its ability to rapidly grow plants was useful for when I needed to grow a ladder plant to get to a higher area. The flippers were sort of useful since they let you swim through water, but I rarely needed to use this. The Alchemist Boomerang's ability to cut down plants was only useful once for me, and the Teleport Stone I legit never used outside of the temple because I got it so late into the game. In a theoretical later game, I would love to see temples and their items expanded and improved on. While I really enjoyed the boss fights and the lovely visual designs for each temple, I wish they were longer and the items more useful. And on that note actually, I think now is about time we finally get into the combat. In battle, you fight with a deck composed of every card the spirits in your party have learned, with no upper limit on how many cards can be in a deck. For each round of combat, you'll have 3 energy to use for playing cards, feeding yours or enemy spirits items for healing as well as buffs or debuffs, and even running away. Each spirit on the field also has an armor total next to their health bar, which reduces damage taken by the current total. This can be reduced by using cards with armor damage or by using an element that spirit's weak to. When brought to 0, the spirit will become dizzy for a round and take 50% more damage. When your spirits level up, you will of course be able to increase their armor or one of their other 3 stats, and you'll even be able to add one of 3 cards to that spirit's deck if you want. Depending on the spirit and their type, what cards they'll learn will be very different, and no type is bad at all. All of them have their uses and things they specialize in, which leaves a lot of room for experimentation. The best part though is that the depth in combat isn't really overwhelming or hard to learn at all. While some are better than others, any combination of spirit can still make for a good deck. So while there's a lot here for those who love deck building, you don't need to be great at it to have a good time. Which for me is great, because this means more people will be able to enjoy a combat system I kinda love. Slowly building up and improving my deck as well as seeing what the other spirit types were capable of was a blast for me. Honestly, my only wish is that there were more boss spirits to fight, because while the 6 we have are great, I couldn't help but want a few more by the end of the game. If I had any other complaints though, I do wish we had a menu to interact with party spirits instead of the medallion. See, in order to level up, heal, or buff your spirits outside of battle, you have to select the medallion from the tool menu to enter a small pocket dimension where you can then individually do what you need with the team. It's a neat idea in universe, but honestly I'd rather shave off a few steps from this process by just having a menu. With that being said though, we now have to get to the unfortunately weakest part of Moonstone Island, its farm sim aspects, because for as much fun as I did have with it, mechanically it's not super necessary to mess with. Normally for similar games, farming is important for getting a lot of money and plenty of other things depending on what we're talking about. Here though, you can pretty easily get thousands of gold by doing stuff for the island's spirit researcher Zed and by selling ingots to the blacksmith Farah, who will buy them off you for 50% more money. Farming can still be useful for getting stuff that restores your stamina, but if you want, you can pretty easily get tons of items like that just by exploring other islands. Now with that being said though, there absolutely are other uses for farming beyond stuff for stamina. Growing stuff that boosts a spirit's stats for a day or debuffs enemies can be pretty useful, especially when making concoctions, potions that combine the effects of 2 crops. You can even make special crops that give experience points once you find them in the wild and unlock them at the town store. If I'm being fair though, I will say, this was probably handled the way it was to allow people who aren't interested in the farming aspect to more easily be able to focus on the exploration and combat side of things. So while I still wish this part of the game was stronger, I do have to respect and appreciate that. On a final and more positive note though, upgrading and decorating my house was very fun. I also love that not only do you have complete freedom to put it anywhere you like, you can even make more than one, which isn't something I've seen other farm sims do. I'm gonna be honest, Moonstone Island's developers, Studio Supersoft, have really impressed me. Not just because of how great their first game is, but also because of how unique it is. Moonstone Island manages to take so many different elements and somehow manages to blend them together in a way that really works. I love the freedom you get with exploring the world and how much there is to find, from dungeons to temples to all of the spirits and everything else in between. And as a creature collector, while I wish there were a few more spirits, I really like what we have. The designs for them are generally really charming, and some of them are just adorable. The card-based combat system has plenty of depth for those who love deck builders, but it's easy enough to learn and casual-friendly enough that anyone can enjoy it. The farming aspect of the game is a bit on the weaker side of things, but honestly that's probably more of a me thing than anything. Depending on your preferences, that won't be a problem at all. So if I've made you even remotely interested in this game, definitely consider playing it for yourself. It's a really great time, and if you don't want to play it on PC, don't worry because it's actually getting a Switch version sometime during spring 2024. With all that being said, thank you all for watching, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I hope you all have a nice day.